MacGybo.
So when people talk about ganking, they talk about a few different things, although it's all put under the same word of ganking. But I think that when you drill down into it, there's a few different kinds of ganking. There's ganking for profit, which is the alpha ganking, tornado ganking, thrasher ganking. There's ganking of freighters, which I think is slightly different because it really does require like 20 or 30 accounts, and that's a different mindset. That turns trade pipes, systems in trade pipes, into something that's a big deal. I'm thinking of like Uedama, which is still high security space, but as anyone who flies a freighter knows, it's something you've got to be hyper aware of because there are different ganking groups will pounce on you and destroy you, and it's people who multi-box and use several different accounts with catalysts or talos, and again that is ganking for profit, but I think it's slightly different from an individual ganking with just maybe 2-3 characters. And I would extend that second definition with the multiple characters to abyssal pilot ganking, which again is a ganking for profit, but it's hunting down targets in high security space as they come out of abyssal space. Some pilots, as they come out of abyssal space, are suspect, but some aren't, and they lose billions. They're all bling fit ships, and there are pilots who are so good at what they do, who kill these guys, and they make billions a day. So I would say that that's the second kind of ganking, which is multi-box ganking, again for profit. The third kind is a kind I don't really get, and it's miner ganking. And by that I mean people in ventures, people in other small mining ships, and there's this whole thing about you need to purchase a license to mine asteroid belts, and it doesn't seem to be a problem to these gankers who aren't ganking for profit to kill very new pilots in ventures. And the word that's used for that kind of ganking is griefing, and I agree with that. I agree that that's the right term to use. I don't think it's something which benefits people by and large, because it's people that aren't really doing anything vastly wrong. And if it's new pilots, then that can be quite discouraging. But when people see that I'm doing high security suicide ganking for profit, they just use the word ganking without differentiating. And it means that people get confused. So if I was discussions on Reddit, or where I've seen it, because I try to stay away from Reddit, is on Twitter, is people talking about what I do, but talking about it as griefing and talk about it as affecting the ability of EVE Online to retain new pilots. Now, when I kill somebody, I don't kill them because they're new. I kill them purely because of the value of their cargo hold. If you've seen my videos, you see that when I am scanning a ship and then killing a ship, that's all happening in like a second, 2 seconds. What I'm not doing is pulling up the biography of that pilot to see how old they are. The age is completely irrelevant. It's the value of the cargo is the only factor. But what I don't like is the idea that what I do would cause somebody to quit EVE Online. And to try and balance that out, I mean, I've seen no evidence that it does happen, but to balance out the fact that I might not be helping new pilots, I set up 2 different initiatives. One was any pilot who's under 6 months old who gets a ship lost to another pilot, not an NPC, not Concord, but to another pilot, I'll reimburse that ship up to the value of 30 million ship and mods. So that's one initiative that I've been doing. The second one was I built 1,000 ships, PvP fit ships, and just gave them away to anybody who wanted to try PvP for the first time. I left it next to a system, a low security space system, so people could easily jump in and just try it, and there was so many people took me up on that offer. But that's just to try and balance out people who maybe suggest that what I'm doing is negative towards new pilots, because I don't want that to be the case. But I thought I'd dig a little deeper and I'd look up some stats. So the stats that I pulled together were every pilot that I killed from the start of January 2022 until mid-July 2022. So every pilot that I've killed in high security space whose cargo had a value of 400 million or more. So I thought I'd pull that together and see from those stats who it was I was killing and whether or not the new pilots I was killing weren't coming back. So the stats are as follows. In that time frame of just over 6 months, I killed 67 pilots whose cargo had a value of 400 million or more. So that's a total, that includes mods, that includes ships, and that includes stuff that didn't drop. So I'm not saying I got 123 billion, which is what the figure is. It's in excess of 123 billion. But that's the value of the kill mails, those 67 kill mails. So it's 123 billion 476 million 339,588.43 ISK across 67 pilots, all of whom were either in corvettes, shuttles, and a couple in frigates as well. What I'm going to do is break these down, the 67 pilots, to age. Firstly, I'm going to break it down to age. So the first stat that I've got for you is that 15% of the people that I killed were 1 day old. So these are pilots that were created, flew into Jita with high value cargoes on the very first day that they were created, and they got killed. Now, cast your mind back to your very first day of EVE Online and discovering the game, discovering how it works. And ask yourself, would you, or did you on your very first day, jump into a ship, a small ship, and fly into Jita with this high value cargo in your ship? Some of these pilots, I would say maybe they did, because there was a very high proportion of the ships that I killed that had an expert cerebral accelerator on board were pilots that were 1 day old. So out of the 15%, which was 10 pilots, 5 of them were killed because they had one of these accelerators on board, which are worth in excess of $1 billion. So it could be the case that these pilots maybe signed up and got this accelerator as part of a deal. Now, what I don't know is whether or not these pilots were alts of existing players, or whether or not they were people who joined and this was the first time they'd ever played EVE Online. I've got no way of knowing this. Some of the other kills give away a bit more. 2 of the kills were people who had very expensive clothes on board, and I managed to speak to both of those pilots who told me that they were given to them by friends who were quite happy to give them high value cargo but not tell them how to handle it, and both of them lost those. It was very expensive clothes. One of the pilots had a multiple pilot certificate, training certificate on board. Now that to me says 100% that is an alt of an existing player, because the purpose of that certificate is to allow an alt to train while your main trains. It allows 2 pilots on the same account to train, or even 3 if you want to go for a third one. One of the pilots had a large skill injector on board as well. Now, even if you did have a very expensive cargo in your ship on your first day, would a large skill injector really be something that you were going to be carrying about? So I doubt very much that that pilot is someone who was just playing EVE for the first time. But what I did do was look through 2 bits of evidence which were available to me to see whether or not these pilots quit as a result of being ganked. And the 2 things that I looked at was Zkill, to see if there was any activity after they were ganked. And the second thing was to look at their employment history to see if there was any change in the corp that they were in, so that way I would know that they were still playing. And it showed that out of those 10 pilots, 9 of them, I've got proof that they continued to play after they were ganked. Just because the 10th didn't show up on either of those doesn't mean that they quit. They may have done, but the evidence shows that the other 9 didn't. If I look into the next oldest age group, I've split it up from 1 day to 1 week. So these are pilots that are 2 days to 7 days old. And 6%, which is 4 pilots that I killed, were in that age bracket. Now, The pilots that I killed that were 1 day old, those kills totaled 31 billion ISK, 31.77 billion ISK, which averages is 3.17 billion each. The pilots that I killed from 2 days old to 7 days old, that totaled 2.3 billion, but the average is only 0.594 billion ISK each. And of that, there was 1 with a large skill injector, 1 with Daily Alpha Injectors. Sorry, 2 with Daily Alpha Injectors. So you were 2.5 times more likely to be ganked by me if it was your first day rather than your 2nd to your 7th. Which I think means that these characters created on their first day are alts. They were given a high value item, they went to Jeter to do whatever with it, but I may be wrong. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The next age group that I looked at was from the end of 1 week to 3 months, so a much larger group of people there. 16% of people in that group were killed, so that's 11. Total ISK killed there was 24 billion, which works out as 2.1 billion each. So these pilots are older, but they were still carrying high value cargo into Jeter. We've got a much higher proportion of these pilots are carrying large skill injectors. 4 out of the 11 were killed with large skill injectors on board. 1 of them was killed with Plex on board as well. We move into the 3 months to 1 year old age group, so pilots who should be learning the ropes, should be knowing what they can and can't do, and the environment of Eve and the hostility and what can happen in high sec. And yet we find that 15% of pilots fall into this bracket, and 50% of the people in this bracket that I killed were carrying large skill injectors in cargo. There was also skill extractors and the cerebral accelerators as well. We move into the next bracket, 1 year to 3 year, which again is 15% of the pilots that I killed. These pilots should definitely know better than to be hauling stuff around. 11 billion in total, which is 1.1 billion each. And 4 of those, 40% of those pilots, large skill injectors on board, in a Corvette or a shuttle and jumping into Jeter. The next group covers a much wider age group. 23% of the pilots that I killed were between 3 years and 10 years old. Now that's 39 billion in total, but that's 2.6 billion each on average. And over half of those had large skill injectors on board. So you're talking about anything from a 3-year-old to a 10-year-old pilot still jumping into Jeter with one of the most valuable items in the game in a ship that could be shot by a single thrasher. 10% of the pilots that I killed were over 10 years old, and they had an average of 1 billion each in their kill mails. So we break that down, 63% of my kills are pilots over 3 months old, but 15% are getting killed on their first day. And I'm going to hammer on about this. The first day on Eve is really designed to be about the new player experience, about learning the environment, learning the ropes, learning how the ships move. I remember my first day on Eve and thinking that the ship would move the way that it would like a flight simulator, like the ship would move by pressing a button to make it move forward or backwards or left or right or what have you. And then learning quickly, it wasn't like that at all. You're learning about the environment, about the mechanics, about what a station is, about what a Stargate is, about asteroid belts and moving around and what have you. I can't see that part of that experience for a pilot who didn't know anything about the game would be to sink real money into that. How would you even know about Jeter if this was your first day? I don't know. But my take from this is that even though 15% of the people that I kill on the day that their character was created, I think it's highly, highly unlikely that those characters are people who haven't played EVE Online before. Final statistic is that out of the ships that I killed, 66% of them were Corvettes, 14% of them were in frigates, and 9% were shuttles. And the only way that I would be getting a shuttle, the way that I gank, would be if they jumped through a gate and just sat there, or if they were autopiloting. Corvettes are different. I can get them as they jump through the gate. And the frigates must have been autopiloting or just sitting there as well. So my takes are older pilots are every bit as likely to be carrying high value items as younger pilots. My biggest kill was a character that was 1 day old who had 21 billion worth of clothes on board. My second largest kill was a character that was 54 days old and had a massive amount of large skill injectors on board. Out of my 10 biggest kills, 7 of them had large skill injectors on board, so people are still bringing large skill injectors into Jita. But out of my 10 largest kills, 6 of those pilots were between 3 years and 10 years old. So being older doesn't mean you're being wiser. I've pulled all of that data from Zkill. All of my kills are all on Zkill, so you're able to just go in and take a look at the stats yourself. If you've got any theories or anything you'd like to say about these stats, I'd love to hear them, and you can leave them in the comments below. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye now.